Welcome to this latest episode of Keynote 180 interview series on educational technology. Ladies and gentlemen, it has not been long ago when scholars would sit alone in public libraries for weeks and sometimes months at a stretch, poring over thousands of pages and hundreds of books, only to come up with one idea of significance, one article of mention that could be passed on to posterity to keep the flame of research burning. Today, the same task can be performed in a matter of days or even in a matter of hours, and all that with the help of latest 21st century education technology. And the credit goes to those visionary leaders, especially the leaders in educational technology, who are spearheading this exponential growth in technology, in technological resources. And to those visionary leaders in education, both at the secondary and higher education level, who are trying to bridge this gap of equity of access to these resources. And we, through this series of interviews, we are trying to learn from their experience, from their successes, from their challenges, both at the secondary as well as at the higher education level. And to this end, today we're going to meet the educational leadership team at Edison Township in Edison, New Jersey. By the way, it's the same Edison, New Jersey, which has been named as one of the best places to live in America by Money Magazine. And it's also the same Edison, New Jersey, famed by Thomas Edison, where the first light bulb was perfected and where the first sound recording was made as the famous Menlo Park Lab of Thomas Edison. In 2016-2017 school year, there were about 15,600 students enrolled in Edison Township Public Schools. And of those 15,600 or so students, about 76% of those students are of Asian heritage, about 10% are Hispanics, and about 8% are African American. Of those students who took SAT in 2016-17 school year, about 85% of those scored at or above benchmark for reading, and about 71% of those scored at or above benchmark for mathematics. So let's go ahead and learn from the experience of the district leadership team at Edison Township Public Schools. Join me in welcoming the leadership team of this district. So I will let you introduce yourselves and introduce your district also, and your role in that organization.
Okay, I'm Deborah Gulick. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Secondary Schools.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Baninder Mahabir, and I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Elementary.
Oh. And okay, so you also welcome Ms. Mahabir. And Ralph, if you could also reiterate, your role.
Yes, Ralph Barca. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Edison Public Schools.
Perfect. Now, this is going to be a wide-ranging introduction and interview, about your introduction of your district and the different programs that you implement. It will cover infrastructure, it will cover the instruction, it will cover professional development. So quite a comprehensive array of topics that we'll cover in this. So I think I will start with something with Rolf. I think this sounds like your area of responsibility. So where do we stand in terms of one-to-one device provision for each student in the district at this time in Edison?
Yeah, Edison Public Schools, we are completely one-to-one as far as students, teachers, K-1, we use Apple iPads. Mm-hmm. 2 through 8, we are Chromebook. Mm-hmm. We use Chromebook devices, and in our high schools, we use the Apple MacBook Airs. Mm-hmm. One common denominator across at least 2 through 8 would be Google Classroom as our LMS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 through 12.
2 through 12. I'm sorry, 2 through 12.
2 through 12.
Yeah. So we are a Google shop. We definitely leverage Google and everything that Google has to offer. Mm-hmm. So as far as that is concerned, as far as our infrastructure device.
So this transition, from iPad to Chromebook to MacBook, does it cause any kind of learning curve, or does it cause any kind of confusion from one step to another when you transition from one device to another?
I don't think it does at the elementary level, at least when they're going from iPads to Chromebooks. The teachers they do a really nice job of sort of introducing the curriculum with that as a tool. I don't think that they actually take a whole lot of time to talk just about the Chromebooks themselves, except for the very, very, very beginning of the year. But I think the kids are very familiar with it from home anyway at this point, that it really hasn't been much of a transition there. I would probably guess the same.
I would say that because the MacBook Air is such a powerful and student-friendly device, the children are really happy as ninth graders when they get them. So any learning curve is quickly compensated for because of the opportunities that they have in using the MacBook, which definitely exceed what they were able to do on the Chromebook.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, I would like to know a little more about the instructional component when we get to the instructional part of our interview here. So going back to Rolf, so are you leveraging any E-rate funding resources for technology purchase in the district?
We have. Over the past couple of years, the E-rate has changed, so now it kind of leveled the playing field of allocating $150 per student. So given that Edison Public Schools is a fairly large district, we had a significant amount of money. We did leverage some over the past couple of years, but this being our last year of the 2 of 5 year rule, we have about $1 million that we're looking to do some significant network upgrades. Now, of course, E-rate has their money, but we have to come up with our portion as well. So we're definitely looking at it. As a matter of fact, I had a budget meeting yesterday, and we were just discussing that topic. So based on budgets, based on pending things that might be happening within the district as far as building buildings, that could be a possibility, but we try to leverage as much as possible.
So it means, do you think that you are, on par with the National Education Technology Plan's bandwidth recommendations for individual devices?
We exceed them, but I don't take that as a measure. I really look at performance and what's going on in the classroom and how performance is happening, rather than I'd like to get a real view of what's going on. Like, for example, we have 2 internet pipes at 2 different locations for a total of 3 gigabit. At any given time, we max out at about 2 gigs. So we definitely have an overhead to spare. And given that Google and the Chromebooks are very broadcast intensive, our bandwidth and our network infrastructure has been holding up. I'm more concerned about the age of the equipment that for looking for upgrades, and also trying to take advantage of newer technologies on the equipment that we could leverage. But as far as infrastructure and bandwidth is concerned, we're pretty comfortable. At any given time, obviously it's equipment, so at any given time there might be a piece of equipment that might be failing or not acting properly, we'll definitely address, but for the most part, any given day, we seem to be pretty stable as far as bandwidth is concerned. And as far as reliability, I can't think of, knock on wood, the last time we were down for anything.
Yeah, this year's been very good.
Yeah.
That's very nice. And I think, that brings to the next question. Are you comfortable dealing with the interference, from personal devices in the school network when the students bringing their own devices, whether they are cell phones or tablet devices or computers? Are you able to, screen them out and, safeguard, your own network?
We do. We try to do our best. We have multiple networks. We have a student network for the Wi-Fi. We have a staff network for the Wi-Fi. Typically on the student network, we block mobile devices. But one thing I learned about Edison and the kids of Edison, they will definitely think of a way of getting around what you have, the blocks that you have in place. So there's always issues. We always take a look at, see what's going on, and our techs in the field always have their ears to the ground. So we, if there's something that's kind of coming through, we try to circumvent it before it happens. But like when you have 20,000 users at a given time, there's always something that's going to kind of sneak through. So I don't see it as a major issue. Even if they do bring their devices, and that's something we could talk. We had some initial discussions back a couple of years ago about kids using their own devices. We didn't like that idea of the BYOD because there's the parity issue. But we're not too concerned about personal devices on the network. If they're on the network and they're using our bandwidth, they're being blocked and they're being filtered. So, but for the most part, we do have blocks in place, yes.
And how are you integrating the peripherals and accessories like Chromecasts and Apple TVs, the devices which have limitations on installing your certificates? How do you integrate those devices in your instruction? Assuming that some of your teachers either are using these devices for extending their own terminals onto projectors and onto whiteboards or on the walls, or the TVs, the new we have the new TVs. Are you able to integrate those peripherals, Apple TVs, Chromecasts, and smart TVs into teaching and learning?
We haven't. There's pockets of areas that we use those devices. We haven't really implemented them across the district. Every classroom has a Promethean board, which is an interactive whiteboard. K through 8. In our high schools, we got away from the interactive whiteboards and we went to more of a college atmosphere where there's a projector over a whiteboard and a teacher will come in and connect their MacBook and then teach from there. We do have a limited number of either Chromecast or Apple TVs, and we just keep it local to the classroom network.
Any plan to move towards LED monitors in the near future, interactive LED monitors?
Yeah. That's a good question because I'm kind of. The answer is going to be yes. Just because that's where the technology is going. I'm not a big proponent of it as of yet, but it's something we have to take a look at. Like I said before, we have projectors in every classroom. There's the high maintenance of it. I like the footprint of the projector, the screen, because it's a large screen for all kids to view. Once you go to a flat panel device, the footprint becomes smaller. It does become brighter, so there are definitely pros to it, but it becomes smaller. I'm just concerned about the footprint of the LED versus the projector.
The most recent, I was looking at, some of these devices, they are now up to 75 inches, and some probably in 82 plus inches also coming up.
Yeah.
Do you need something larger than that too?
I like the 80s. However, as you go up in size, you go up in price.
That's right.
So that's the issue.
Correct.
But with that said, we are going to look at one thing we like to do here at Edison is parity. So if I'm going to start putting panels into a school, I would like to do the entire school. So one thing that we discussed was possibly taking one of the smaller schools, outfitting it with panels, and then taking down the boards that are there and use that in the other schools for parts when something does go down. And use that as our way of launching into the panels versus spending more money on projectors. And the ways to get on the panels are much better than projectors as well.
And naturally, when we are talking about widening the resources and tapping into the resources that the web offers now, I believe probably that is probably where I see the other districts are moving in that direction, and the price is also coming down slowly and gradually as we see these LED panels are starting now at $2,200 for a really large size.
And then you start talking about, do you need interactive or you just need a large panel?
Oh, definitely they got to be interactive. Otherwise, you will be stuck, with another device, that you need to project it from. So interactive devices are always naturally helpful.
Right. So there's that conversation as well, because then once you start going non-interactive, like we did in the high school, because we didn't, except for specialty classrooms, we didn't see, at least in Edison, where the teachers and students were using the interactive piece of the board rather than just using it as a projector.
Okay.
Especially when we go one-to-one, because you have the ability to also show your screen through other devices. That if you're sitting at your desk and you want to show something on your screen, you can do it in other ways as well.
Okay. So I think this. The next question goes to Ms. Mojave, and this is about the instruction, and especially for the elementary level math and language arts in that area. What technology-driven instructional programs are you using for math and language arts in those grades?
So math, we are not using anything at the moment except for we do have Study Island. But other than that, we did used to have 10 marks. 10 marks is going to go out of business at the end of this year, and we were starting a new program. So we didn't want to continue it for this year, so we let it go. However, we are piloting a new adaptive math program called Exact Path. Mm-hmm. Not sure how it's going to go. It actually worked to our advantage to not have 10 marks this year, because with the new math program, I think it really gave teachers a feel for the math and the pedagogy rather than relying on the technology piece. Mm-hmm. Previously, we only had 10 marks, 3 through 5, and Math and Focus was K through 2. And what I think was happening was that the teachers were relying on the tech piece a lot because it was a technological program, 10 marks in 3 through 5, and we actually needed to get back to the hands-on. So it's an interesting question about the role technology plays in teaching and the role of a teacher. So in some ways with math, we went backwards a little bit to go forwards again later. So we needed to get back to that hands-on piece. And for language arts, we also have Study Island, but we also have Lexia. Mm-hmm. And the teachers use that as needed, I'll say, or if their students are in RTI, the Tier 3, some of the Tier 2 students, we're lucky we have an intervention and extension period built into our day, so that is sometimes when they use that as well. Mm-hmm. Some students also use it at home. There are a prescribed number of minutes that the company suggests, and it's hard to get to that amount if you want to really truly focus on the pedagogy in the classroom, and so it's done with flexibility, we'll say, at this point.
So I think probably that also brings me to a question that is related to this one. I think at the elementary level, do you see more of your students, second language learner students, do you see more of them at the elementary level or at the secondary level?
I think we actually have a pretty equal spread across the district. We do have a lot of ESL students. I don't know the exact number, but we have a pretty sizable population here.
And is there any special intervention program that you use for that population?
We were actually using, I can't remember the name, but we gave it up. And now, what's the one?
So we use all of our teachers are trained in sheltered instruction, so that's basically what our model is, and we have some. But there's of teachers.
There's a data
we're using Elevate as a data tracking tool, but not an instructional tool.
It's not an instructional tool.
Oh, okay. So in terms of, I think, as a service to our audience, how would you rate the two programs that came out of this discussion, Study Island being one? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the effectiveness of that program, and also for the?
That's a tough. I don't know that I can even answer that question, to be honest with you, because nothing's done in isolation. So I think I think everything we use is a supplement, but I don't know that I can say with truth that, that is the thing that's causing the effectiveness, because we know that everything is based on the teacher. So I would say that the two that we're kind of down to right now are probably the best of the bunch. We had other ones and let them go, but I would say that those two are doing well for what we need them to do.
Oh, okay.
If I can answer in that way. I think it depends on the teacher. So, and then not all teachers use it all the time, or at varying amounts. So I didn't feel like I wanted to mandate teachers to be using it all the time if they didn't need to, because then you find kids who are on it that could be doing, project-based learning, or extending in other ways rather than just being in front of a screen. So I think the district, if I could speak for Debbie as well, we've come to a place where technology was hot and heavy and was the focus for a few years, which was good because everybody got used to it and the change happened. Sometimes these things take a really long time, but because the focus prior to us was this implementation of technology, everybody got on board. So now we are working to make sure it's used with balance, we'll say. So we're kind of, I would say, pulling back a little bit while still moving forward and figuring out what is the best things to use and when, rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're in an interesting place. I would still say we're far beyond many other districts, because I don't even know that many of them are even in the technology usage place, speaking from the few districts that I've been in, and I think Debbie's been in as well. So we're in a really great position thanks to Ralph and some previous administrations. So.
Ralph has been a visionary. I can testify to that. His tenure at Edison Public Schools too.
Yeah.
So the same question for Ms. Gill, what do you think, what program are you using for math and language arts at secondary level?
So in math and language arts, we're still selecting textbooks in the traditional model, but of course, every text must have an online component. At the 612 level as well, our teachers use Google Classroom with great consistency. And so in addition to linking their textbook sites, perhaps through their Google Classroom, they can bring in their own kind of open source materials, and that's pretty much what they use. But we don't have, we did use Discovery Tech Book. We've used that at the middle school level and in a couple of science classes, and the content is very good. For some of our teachers, the navigation's been a little bit difficult, so it hasn't rolled out with the consistency among, remember, we do have 16,000 students here in 19 buildings, and so consistency is difficult, and Discovery Tech Book is difficult to navigate, although once you're in there, it's a very strong resource. Many of our teachers are using it as a supplement to a traditional hardcover text.
So you mentioned, that you are also harnessing the OER, the Open Education Resources, also. Is there a unified interface for students and teachers? They can go to access all of these sources in one place, or they are.
No, not yet. I would say that Vininder, I'll talk a little bit about your work. At the elementary level, there was even more being used than the secondary level, and so you spent some time kind of just harnessing what is it that we're using. We started that approach at the secondary level, what are you using, and are moving towards any curriculum that requires the use of a Creative Commons or an open educational resource has to be embedded within the curriculum so that we get to a better place of what's required. Ralph is introducing, Vininder and I, we're not, I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but Ralph tells us about a product that is going to help bring all of this together so that our kids will be able to log into their interface, and district approved sites will all be available to them, because that's not concern right now.
I think that's what, when I was, browsing through, I saw that a very fine tab there for digital backpack, and that tab usually encompasses resources like these.
Yeah.
Rolf, do you have any plan to expand for teachers to add, these OER resources, especially curated and vetted resources? Because, it looks like right now teachers have a lot of autonomy to choose and select whichever resource they want, as against that, because you have the general categories of your population in terms of student needs and all that. So are you in the process of making a comprehensive resource like a digital backpack wherein students and teachers can go to and tap into those resources?
Well, I was going to say, as Beninda and Debbie said prior, we are kind of going into a little transition. We have new administration. Actually, Deborah and Beninda, even though Beninda was here prior to as a principal, but in her role now as the chief academic officer, so they're relatively new to the district, past 2 years, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to them coming on board, we had two other academic officers and the superintendent that was really forging ahead with the technology. And that's when I came on board. They had a vision of just going one-to-one, building out our infrastructure, going one-to-one K-12. Mm-hmm. Over the past couple of years, even though we made great strides as far as introducing technology to the district, getting kids, getting teachers, getting everyone on board with technology, pushing out curriculum, there was some pushback. And some pushback came from the board, saying we need a little more, a blended of, let's get some teachers back involved as much as using technology as a supplemental piece. So, and again, that's their side more than my side. And with that said, we did a lot of integrations with a lot of different companies as far as single sign-on and things of that nature, and and across different technologies. Now, this year, we're implementing a new product called ClassLink, which will resolve our universal single sign-on, and it will give us a portal where we can start building exactly what you're talking about, an area of where district-approved curriculum, as well as teacher-initiated. See, because when we start talking about teacher-initiated, one thing that I'm concerned about is data privacy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I can't have a teacher just going out and say, I want to try this application, download her student roster and uploading it into a rogue portal somewhere, because there's no control over that. We don't know where that data is going. So we are doing a lot in the background as far as student policy, as far as security, as far as building, even though we want teachers to go out there and expand their horizons as far as curriculum, we need to have it in a controlled basis. And we do have a process in place where actually we have a great team of professional development that is a real focus. And for our transformation of the whole technology world, they were really critical in getting this whole plan in place, because they were just they were nonstop. They were like the spearhead on the spear. So there's a lot involved. It's not just putting curriculum out there. There's so much more that we have to work on, and that we are working on, from the infrastructure to the curriculum. But that piece in the middle, which is most critical, is the integration and integration from technology, curriculum, and policy.
And if I can go back to your question for a second, we, at the elementary level, we have links built into all of our curriculum, so everything's right there for the teacher. They can really just click on it and it should go. The difficulty we have is the addresses often change, and so every year we have to essentially revise our curriculum, because we have to go back and check and redo all of the links, which is pretty time intensive. So that's one thing that's a little bit tricky, I will say. Another thing I was going to mention is that, talking off of Ralph and saying, he talked about how the initiative kind of started. Another thing that I'll say that our previous superintendent did that was really helpful in pushing the technology initially, and I know this because I was a building principal, was that across the district, there were pockets of teachers who essentially on their own decided that they wanted to go one-to-one. I had 2 classrooms in my building, and they were allowed to kind of present to the superintendent, and he essentially, this was prior to us going one-to-one, and bought the one-to-ones for each of those classrooms. And what I found happened in my building was that after having done that with the 2 classrooms, other people, as often happens, wanted to also do it. So I had made a proposal to him to go for my full building, and then, as luck would have it, at that point he decided that he wanted to do the whole district anyway at the elementary level. So it was also a little bit of this ability to the groundswell, the ground roots of teachers saying, hey, do you think that I would be allowed to do this? And principals saying, yep, let's ask. And they did. And the benefit of that was when I knew I was going to be asking for a full building implementation, I had lab classrooms already set up where teachers could go. I had those teachers come together. We created a list of apps that were great for different things in our curriculum. And this was just at the building level. It wasn't at the district, because we weren't doing it at the district at the time. And they ran workshops for me, differentiated workshops, ones for people who had no experience with technology and those who already knew. So I would say that was also a pretty big way that the movement sort of continued, I'll say. It started with the superintendent and then continued at each of the building levels, I think.
So with the infusion of individual devices, and I think you are almost 100% one-to-one, what is the process for recommending apps, let's say if you have for your Chromebooks? What is the process? Does it go top-down or does it go bottom-up?
It goes bottom up. We get requests from teachers. It will get vetted through our staff development, as I mentioned before. And if you go to our staff development webpage, you'll see a list of apps or extensions that we use with the Chrome. So once they view it and see it deemable as far as something that is viable, we allow it.
Perfect.
And not only that, but we are very big with the social media, like the YouTubes and things of that nature. Even though we have to restrict, based on not only law but doing the right thing, we do allow, substantial amount of YouTube and social media in the classroom, because there's so many different learning tools there for teachers to use.
And I think you have led me into the next topic already. So can you give me examples of successful implementation of social media for in the classroom, especially which is on a larger scale, not just a teacher level, just one teacher working on a classroom level kind of a social media. Is there any social media success example that you can share?
In kindergarten and first grade, we use something. Well, not really kindergarten. I'll say first grade. We use something called Seesaw. It's not just a social media platform. It's sort of meant for differentiation. It's kind of the whole package. It sort of does everything. But the teachers are really taken to that. We haven't purchased it yet, although I haven't had my budget meeting yet, and it might be. I haven't decided yet whether the benefits outweigh. I haven't decided yet. Whether the benefits outweigh.
This is how our conversations usually go. Does this come out of the curriculum budget or Ralph's budget? So there's 2 of us here, so it comes out of Ralph's budget.
He held the purse strings even at Patterson.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not that expensive if we were just doing it for first grade, which is the only grade I would probably do it in at this point. But it allows teachers to essentially, in a monitored fashion, to pretty much do everything, to modify work. I mean, they take pictures of worksheets and then modify it, move things around. They or create things on there that are able to be manipulated. They're able to record, and kids can listen. You can literally do anything. It's actually quite amazing. And the kids can comment on topics as well. So it's and it looks more. I'll say it's more kid friendly. It's easier to use. So I think even our second grade teachers would love it, but we have already started with Google Classroom. So I know that there's even some middle school teachers who use it. I get usage from the company trying to solicit our business to purchase it. So that's been something that's worked very well, I will say. Other than that, I don't.
No, but our teachers use, Ralph supports the Google platform really well, so they use Google Classroom.
We leverage Google pretty heavily. You know, it's the resource that is there, and it's, you know, for the price you can't beat it. One component that we do block is handouts, though. We try to, kids are kids, so that was one piece where Google Hangouts, where they get conference and have that piece. We do block that because it's beyond the classroom. You know, it's beyond what's necessary in the classroom. Whenever a teacher wants to do a virtual field trip or things of that nature, we'll enable it for the classroom, but for the most part, that'll be one component that'll be disabled.
So our teachers use the Flipgrid, right? They use Flipgrid a lot, which feels the social media line. They'll send their recordings in, so they do that.
Nearpod.
Yeah, we use Nearpod, which we have some licenses for, so they use that. And then organizationally, our staff development team maintains a Twitter feed for professional learning. So
is that pretty active, that Twitter feed?
Yes.
It has certain times of the year it's more active than others. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that we run kind of an institute where we use it more frequently at certain times of the year.
Perfect.
We also, used to use Padlet, but that was one of those ones that we had to block. So Ralph's wonderful about constantly monitoring and see which ones might be misused.
Well, what happens, it becomes a gateway to unauthorized material. So, and that's where, and a lot of times we hear it from the teachers, we hear it from the students, something like, Padlet, right? So it becomes a gateway to something else, and that's what we have to be concerned with.
So are you integrating technology and the applications, the learning application technology within the existing curricula, or you are teaching them as standalone courses, like, for example, graphic design or coding? Are you teaching coding as a standalone course, or coding integrated into, let's say, teaching of mathematics, teaching of science?
In general, all of the technology education has been integrated K-12, so that different curriculum take on the responsibility for different portions of the technology education. We are looking at integrating and perhaps having a standalone course on coding or an introduction to computer science. We have a STEM Academy in the district, but a lot of that is heavily focused on the engineering technology, not computer science. Right. So we probably are expanding in the computer science.
And have your students started using digital portfolios or blogs?
Certain classes use that as specific assignments.
Well, the digital, right. Yeah, I would say that varies by classroom.
Okay, so this is at the teacher's discretion.
Teacher's discretion.
Okay. So any experience? I think this should be at the secondary level. Are there any vocational skills do you prepare your students for, in addition to regular college readiness?
Outside of technology, we have some vocational type courses that we are not aligned with a CTE program. And some of our students that are, if they're looking for certificated programs, choose to attend our county's vocational programs, which are very strong. But within school, we have introduction courses in many of those areas. We still have an auto shop. We have a robotics lab. We have a wood shop lab. It's not doing kind of the wood shop that I took, 100 years ago. But the students are creating. There are spaces. We have a graphic design lab. We have an extensive and highly successful foods program and fashion program. So you'll find sewing machines. You'll find cars. You'll find drills in our high schools and our middle schools.
So I'm assuming some of these are standalone courses and the others are not.
Most are.
Most are, okay. All right, great. Now I'll move on to the soft skills. Are you leveraging technology to teach soft skills? The skills they would need. This smiley face on Rolf. This is the gateway to success. How are you?
I don't know that we're teaching about emojis.
No, I'm talking about primarily problem solving, working with others, collaborating, leadership, and
Yes.
and curiosity. These are the 21st century skills without which there is no success in real life.
That's
How are we leveraging technology to teach, or if not technology, what other ways are you using to teach these soft skills?
I mean, I think that they, in the context of like language arts, for example, if we're still, even if a kid is writing a piece, they're still gaining feedback from a friend, both maybe online, but also in person. So I would say that that's something we've done a great job of over the last like year and a half, of trying to get the kids back to talking to each other a lot, and building in all of those projects and things that really require more inquiry-based learning and forces them to talk to each other. That was actually one of the reasons we ended up picking the math program that we did choose for this year. Because it was an inquiry-based model, which really forced the teacher to become a facilitator. So that's been a big mind shift, and we also embedded at the elementary level the social emotional learning competencies into our curriculum. And at each building, they really started a committee pretty much that kind of talks about how they can build all of those soft skills. Even if it's, saying hello to people, how to mitigate a discussion or a disagreement, all of those pieces. So it's sort of multi-pronged, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely a focus, and that's, I think, one of the things, would you say, in the last 18 months since we got here has kind of like a renewed focus, like how are you using the technology for the 21st century skills, which 21st century skills doesn't mean technology, it means all of those collaborative and leadership skills. So I actually think we're doing a pretty good job of that.
And I think, in one of the districts, they have moved beyond that. They asked all of their athletes to participate in gaming competitions. So the athletes, would come together, and it became a gaming tournament actually. So it started with about 200 kids, because as soon as you talk about game, everybody, would like to participate in that. So they arranged, we started with 200 students, brought it down to the 5 finalists. So that generated a lot of activity with something that students want to learn. But the precondition was the game has to be a strategy game. It cannot be the game of chance. And that included, strategizing, problem solving skills and all those things through gaming, and also an activity which students were already into. So I think in most cases, what technology is helping with is channeling the existing tendencies and channeling the existing trends to teaching, these skills, to teaching the skills that they need in real life. And I think traditional minds, with the silver heads like mine, would kind of, push off these. Oh no! As soon as the word game comes, we'll talk about wasting of time. We attach that, to wasting of time. But they figured out a way to make that into a very comprehensive learning activity, not only for problem solving but also interaction, that collaboration with others. Because now you're building teams, so you'd have to win as a team, and until the end, just like they do in jiu-jitsu and all that, the losers would and the winners would come together and celebrate it together. So that came out, a phenomenal activity, which included the 21st century skills and technology skills at the same time.
I think that's a struggle that we still have and will have, but it's not about the kids, it's about the people teaching the kids, as you mentioned. It's getting them to understand like the benefits or what the learning is in games in terms of sequence and consequences and what you have to think ahead, the strategy piece, as you mentioned. And so that's one area we haven't really explored yet, but I know at some point we're going to have to.
How do you enforce the phone policy? Did you let the students use phones as they want, or you're struggling with that just like many other places?
At elementary, they don't have them. They can have them in their backpacks, and it's more for safety. A lot of parents want to check in as they return home or to know where their kids are after school, but they do not use them during the day.
So in the secondary schools, I don't see a struggle. I think our kids are pretty good, but I also think our staff is really good about not getting into power struggles over a student with a phone in their hand. So when I walk through the halls, I don't see anyone on their phone. Occasionally, I'll see headphones where maybe somebody's listening to music or something like that, but it's not a big deal. And in the classroom, never. In class, never.
Oh, okay.
So maybe a hall, maybe in the cafeteria, they'll be texting their friends or something like that. So, but in general, I don't know. You don't get a lot of that, right?
No, I don't see. I think it's the way it's being handled in the school. I think that's I think there's a common respect, and we have two high schools and quite different, right?
Very different.
Yeah, and leadership is quite different, and I think they both handle it well, where it doesn't become an issue.
Right. So if a staff member passes a student on the phone or with the headphones in, they're like, "You need those out for class." Kid has them out, and they're in class. So in class time is kind of sacred in our high schools, and they know they're there to work, and we have very, very little issue.
Excellent.
We have phones taken away. I mean, we're normal. We have phones taken away, but not that often.
I saw a very interesting strategy in one of the classrooms. The teacher actually, she had a box with charging station in it. So the students would come in as an incentive, for them to leave. She would ask them to put, their phones in that little box there, and they would keep charging until the end of the class.
Right. That is a great idea. So we have I know I've seen one classroom where they collect them all like right before a test. There's a pocket. Everybody has their own pocket. So I've seen that. But I've been in other classrooms where the teacher says, take out your phone so you can participate in this survey. Yeah. And we just do that. So
excellent.
I don't think it's a big issue for us.
Okay, great. So let's move on to enrichment. Are we using for enrichment activities, for your very advanced learners? Are there specific ways you are leveraging the resources of technology for enrichment activities? Let's say your AP students, these are the high performers.
Only as exists in the curriculum, and I would say you would find creative use of technology in some of those classes. So we also we contracted with Turnitin, which is a writing component that's a really nice. But our students, we're trying to develop their research skills, which AP has a lot of opportunity to do. There's a lot of time and reason to do that. But we have a very highly successful AP program. Our students are doing very well. So change doesn't come easily. So in those enrichment areas, it's just to broaden the content knowledge or the experience, but no one's using anything exclusively to run their program at this time.
So do these students, go for any kind of local or national competitions?
No.
Well,
we have lots of clubs that do that, but not specifically coming out of the AP class.
Okay. And for any technology coding competitions or anything like that, Rolf, or robotics competition, anything that you know of?
Yeah, I think you guys can answer that.
Yeah, I can only think of Odyssey at the mind off the top of my head. I don't think we have any specific coding at the elementary level.
We have engineering competitions and robotics competitions.
Actually, was it last year we won that Lockheed Martin competition? Lockheed Martin had a national competition, I think it was last year.
For middle schoolers?
For middle schools, and our 4 students from Woodrow Wilson Middle School won the competition. It was a national competition. So
And our kids have been invited for their concept of app development at the middle school level as well. I think TCS. Big one.
Any resources that you use for substitute teachers in the absence of a regular classroom teacher? Are you leveraging technology, Rolf? Especially with Google.
We treat every teacher, every person in the district like a substitute would be treated just like a regular teacher. They get an email address, they'll get all the access to what they need to teach that classroom because our communication is via technology. So
are you asking though, like, what do we do if we don't get a substitute? Or
No. If you have a substitute, do the substitutes deliver almost similar level of instruction in the absence of regular classroom teacher, or they're just giving out worksheets and all that?
Our teachers maintain the Google Classroom. Is the assignment will usually be make sure your students get on the Google Classroom, and then the teacher has everything there.
Okay, so it means absolutely. So as long as the substitutes have access to Google Classroom, they can monitor the student activity even in the absence of regular classroom teacher. So what you're suggesting that a substitute would be able to see what the students in that particular class are doing?
they have access
They
to.
don't have access to the classrooms though, right? If they're a long-term sub, they do. They're not a per diem. So if it's someone who's contracted or in for a substantial amount of time, I'll say, then they would. But if it's someone who's just in on a daily basis for some odd reason when someone's sick, then they probably wouldn't.
Got it.
That happens well between the teachers themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's move on to the final topic I have here for the teacher professional development. Are you using any specific in-service PD programs for your teachers?
As far as like a technology platform?
No, in general, delivered through technology.
PDA or PDIs.
I mean, we have a pretty robust PD formula, I'll say here, in terms of we have 3 staff development trainers on staff, as Ralph mentioned before, who really do a good job of putting together almost everything that kind of happens in the district. So they do an after-school institute, which is voluntary for teachers. We also do a summer new teacher institute, as many districts do. And we also poll teachers as needed to kind of bring them up to speed with anything new that we're doing. And so I would say, I don't know that any one of them is necessarily technologically based, but there are a number of offerings in the institute, that the voluntary one, that there's always technology used in them. Some are blended learning, some are purely online, some are in person. And we find actually that the ones that are online or blended actually get more enrollment than the ones that are in person. So, and I think the change that happened over the last year and a half is that teachers are really forced to show their learning and application through these institutes, even if they are blended or online, so that we know that there's, the application is happening, let's say. So even if it's a book club that's online, there's a piece that teachers are asked to try out, let's say, in their classroom and then report on it. So.
And do you have any way to assess teachers' digital skills before you implement a new program in preparation for successful implementation of a new program?
So I will say no. We're lucky that, like I said, that because the technology was expected a few years ago, there is no question or it's everybody. So new teachers get trained in the summertime on all of our technology platforms so that they're good to go. And if for any reason they missed part of it or started late, again, we have the staff development trainers who are available to go out and coach them for individual sessions should they need it. But there's no, at this point, I would say everybody is able to use the technology as expected and beyond, because that was just the expectation that was set. So,
in the implementation, part of the success of the implementation I think comes from this staff development team that really focused on what skills do teachers need. And because they go into the classrooms and they do some job-embedded coaching, even if we didn't assess the digital skill capacity of the district, teachers were able to select for themselves, I need more help, I need an extra workshop, I need this, and the district supported that.
And prior to the rollout of our one-to-one, professional development was the focus. There was a tremendous amount of professional development at that time because there were teachers from both ends of the spectrum as far as their knowledge and how to use the technology. So prior to going one-to-one, say we did that in September of that given year, devices were given out to teachers, say May, and they spent the entire summer being professionally developed to make sure when they came in September, we were using the technology.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellent. This is I couldn't expect anything better. You know, you gave me a great in-depth understanding of the great work that you're doing and the technology implementation in your district. I will, as soon as this thing is finalized and broadcast, I'll send you a link to share it whichever way you like, you know, with your staff or with your peers, and I'm pretty sure, you know, my audience will also have will learn a lot, you know, from this interaction. So I thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Very kind of you, and for getting together at short notice. Thank you very much, sir, Mr. Barca, and we'll talk again. Thank you.